Hey, Pastor, do you wish you could live an abundant lifestyle where you have this effective ministry, where people's lives are being changed, where your church is growing, while at the same time you have time with your family, you have time to do hobbies, you have the ability to travel if that's what you like to do, or maybe you just like crocheting and you want more time to do that, or read more books. Maybe you want to go fishing, maybe you want to go golfing. What are the things that you want to do in your life that you just don't have the time for because you're in ministry and you would like to see that changed? Well, what I want to talk to you today about is how you can have an effective ministry, not compromise anything you're doing on the ministry side, while at the same time living a life of abundance, enjoying the calling that you've had, enjoying the life that you have, enjoying the family that you have, enjoying all of the things that God has blessed you with. If that's what you're interested in, if that's what you want to do, if you want to have an effective ministry and an abundant life, we're going to talk about it today. I'm going to show you what it's going to take to get there. So let's get started. So the big question is this: how do pastors like us who remain focused on the mission of Jesus and serving our communities without being distracted by everything in the world around us, how do we increase our effectiveness while living a lifestyle that doesn't compromise our health, our families, or our personal relationships with Jesus? That's the question this podcast is going to answer. I'm Dr. Brandon Party Cooper, and welcome to the Ministry Hackers Podcast. Welcome to this episode of the Ministry Hackers Podcast. So glad you're here. So glad you're taking time to join me. Wherever you are, whatever it is you're doing, it is October. It is fall. I love it. I'm super excited about it. I live here in Virginia Beach, and so it's not quite what I'm used to from Iowa, but it's really beautiful out. We can still go to the beach. Water's warm. The air is slightly cool. It's just a fun time. And for those of you who are in the areas of the country where your leaves are changing and the beautiful colors are coming out, I'm jealous. I'm jealous of you because I love the fall. The fall is my favorite, and I hope you are enjoying these first few days of fall as we get ready for the holidays. It is coming. Life is coming. And the holidays are right around the corner. I hope you're getting ready for your Christmas services and your Thanksgiving and all the things that go on with the holidays. The holidays are a busy time. I call this season really from September into December. I call this season the season of memories. And the reason I say that is because with school starting, for some of us in August, others of us, it's in September. But with school starting and all those pictures we take of the kids standing in front of the door holding their signs, from that point on, it's all about the memories. For us in the Party Cooper household, we do apple picking and we do pumpkin patch. And we're going to go do some mountain hiking in a few weeks. And we're going to take lots of pictures and have lots of memories with our three boys. There's a couple birthdays for us along the way. And so maybe that's the case for you. I share my birthday with my middle son, Isaiah. He was born on my birthday, and so he's the best birthday present I've ever had. And now I don't have a birthday anymore because it's his. And then we have Thanksgiving, and we have Christmas, and we have New Year's, and there's just memories after memories after memories. And the last thing that I want you to do as a pastor, because for us and those of us in ministry, what that means is for some of us, it's planning season. So we're getting our budgets ready and we're getting our calendars ready. For some of us, we're getting our sermon calendar for 2024 ready. For some of us, we're planning Christmas plays or planning big outreaches during Thanksgiving, or we have Christmas parties that we're getting ready for. There are lots of things that come along with this season, and it's all going to move very quickly. For some of us, we have a huge Christmas Eve service, and some of us have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Christmas Eve services. That's crazy to me. But it's a lot of planning and a lot of prepping and a lot of attention to detail and a lot of team development and a lot of handing out responsibilities, a lot of sermon prep on our end, and a lot of things we have to put together. And the last thing that I want you to do is get to January 2 or January 3, when all the excitement has died down, the New Year's Eve fireworks are over, and whatever remaining bowl games have been played, and it's time to go back into the office and get back to church as usual, I guess you could say. And you look back and you realize, man, I really didn't take time to enjoy the season of memories, the September through December window. I don't want that for you. And that's what we're going to talk about today, because I think that I've been in ministry 25 years, almost 25 years. And I think it's easy to get locked in all the events and all the happenings and all the doings and all the demands and all the challenges that come with just ministry in general. Week in, week out, from January to December, there's just a lot going on in ministry. And it's easy to get locked into a lot of that. And for those of us who are doing it well, those of us who are healthy and, we're prioritizing things correctly, we're spending time with Jesus. We're making sure our devotionals are going well. We're making sure that that we're getting our prayer time. We're making sure that we're spending time taking a deep breath. Maybe some of us really do truly have a day off where we don't do anything but go golfing or meet with some friends or drink some coffee or go work in the garage or go garden, whatever it is you do, whatever it is you love to do. Some of us do that. Some of us enjoy those seasons of ministry. But some of us, and it could be you, this could be you, where that sounds like a fantasy, that you could take time to do any of those things, where you could take time to have a hobby that is a significant part of your life, or take time to go travel and visit some places you've always wanted to see, or travel and see family that you haven't seen in, several months, or in some cases, several years. That sounds like a fantasy to some of us because that's just not the ministry life we live. We live the ministry life of demand, 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 meeting, 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 sermon, 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 service after event, after service, after meeting, after whatever. And we are exhausted with all the things that we have to do. And I think what I've come to in the last several years, at least in the last 5 years, and exacerbated certainly by COVID, is that I don't think, me personally, I don't think that's the ministry that God has called us into. I believe that ministry, being a pastor, is all about sacrifice. I think it's all about serving people. It's all about loving people well. It's all about connecting people with Jesus. Yes, all those things are true. And I think in some cases, some of us are called to live lives of high sacrifice. I know I have some missionary families that I'm friends with and that I've known over the years. And as a family, they live very sacrificial lifestyles because that's the demand of the calling that they live. Some who serve ministry in very needy areas or very low income areas or whatever, they live sacrificial lifestyles to reach whatever the demographic is that they're reaching. I have friends who are in who work at like a teen challenge, so that's a recovery facility for teenagers. In this particular case, teenage boys, and they live a sacrificial lifestyle because whenever there's a need for the boys, they do what they have to be there to take care of them or do whatever is necessary. Some of us have that calling. However, I think a lot of us live the ministry life. We as pastors, we live this ministry life that appears to be very sacrificial. However, what makes me not trust that is from the statistics and the growing number of people, pastors, men and women who are in ministry, who are struggling with depression, those who struggle with anxiety, who are overwhelmed with stress to the point where they are incapacitated. The statistics on the number of pastors who commit suicide. What that tells me is that we are not living a sacrificial ministry lifestyle, most of us. What we are living is a burned out ministry lifestyle, and I don't believe that's a ministry approach that God has called us to. Maybe you're like me. I grew up in the ministry. No, sorry, let me rephrase that. I didn't grow up in the ministry, but when I received my calling to go into ministry, my initial calling was probably when I was a sophomore, junior in high school. But it wasn't until my freshman year at college. I was at Iowa State University. I was studying to be a history teacher and a football coach. I wanted to be a football coach so bad. And I felt God call me into full-time ministry. And so I transferred after that first year. I transferred into Bible college and essentially did my freshman year all over again because not a lot of my credits transferred. And so from that point on, my development into ministry, there was this constant narrative. Ministry's 24/7. You're always on call. You're always there ready to do whatever's necessary. You're ready to run to the hospital as soon as somebody has the slightest issue and they need you there. You're ready to go into a home where there's a domestic abuse situation and you're there to talk them down. You're there when somebody's knocking on your door at whatever hour in the day. You're there to meet that need. That's the ministry mindset that I developed into in my early years of ministry. And I had great mentors. I had great pastors and ministry leaders who invested in me. I had great professors at Bible college. I was developed in a very healthy ministry world, I would say. But that narrative was still there. You're there as a pastor to do whatever is necessary. Whatever people need, you're there to meet that need. That's what ministry is. I don't know that that's true. I don't know that I believe that the way I did 10, 15 years ago. And again, the reason that it's caused me to step away from that is because of the evidence of what's happening to pastors around the world and across the country, directly related to their involvement in ministry. Now, the answer, what a lot of people have, their answer to this is to leave the ministry. I don't think that's, maybe in their particular situation in their life, maybe that's what needed to happen. But I don't know that that's what should happen for most of us. I was called into ministry. And to me, that's a non-negotiable. Ministry is a part of who I am. It's who I'm called to be. I'm called to pastor people. That's the calling. Now, how I go about that, for me, a large part of my calling into ministry has been investing in developing other pastors. Way back in my first year, actually my first week of Bible college, very clearly heard God say that I'm going to invest and develop and grow pastors so that they don't burn out, so they don't have moral failure, so they don't run into all the issues that we were seeing back when I was starting out in Bible college, and that has just grown over the last several decades. I was called to that specifically in ministry. Was I called to leave ministry at some point? No. My calling was to pastor people, and for me in particular, pastor other pastors. And so whenever I ran into moments or seasons where I wouldn't say I was ever to a point of burnout. I wouldn't say that, because I've seen friends of mine and other pastors who have gone through actual burnout. I was never close to that. But seasons where I felt overwhelmed, seasons where I felt like, gosh, I don't know if I want to keep doing this, seasons that were just a struggle to get up and go to the office or get up and put together a sermon. Those seasons, I've had those. Never at any point in that did I seriously consider, I think I'm going to walk away from ministry. I'm going to go do something else. Now, was the temptation there? Sure, I think so. But I think it's because the devil is always trying to do that. He's always trying to pull us out of whatever path God has us on and move us into something else. And he entices us sometimes with all kinds of stuff. And I don't want to get in that. But my point is that the answer for a lot of pastors today is to completely leave the ministry. And I'm not sure that's the answer. I think we need to redesign how we do ministry as a whole. In the last episode, I talked about growing people rather than growing churches. I think that's part of the problem is we focus so much on growing churches. Church planning organizations, it's all about how fast can you grow to certain numbers and keep the growing and boom, 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 and keep going. And we have church planners burning out constantly because of the demand to grow churches, not grow people. And that's a whole nother subject for another time. My point, though, is that I don't think that ministry that God has called us into, that God wants us to be a part of, that the natural conclusion to that is supposed to be burnout or depression or high anxiety or high stress. I don't think that's the case. I think what that tells me is that there is a breakdown in how we approach ministry. And I think it's time that we change that. We move away from that. Because I think he wants us to live abundant lifestyles. I think he wants you to live an abundant lifestyle. You have called, you've answered the call, you've been faithful to the call, you have served people, loved people. And I think that what God wants for you is to continue to do all those things while at the same time enjoying an abundant life that he wants to bless you with. Now, I'm not talking a life full of lavish riches. Maybe for some of us, that's not me, but for some of us, that's the lifestyle maybe God wants for us. I'm just talking a lifestyle where there's margin in your time and you can spend it with your kids, where you can watch your kids grow up and be a part of all the events and things going on in their lives. Or live a lifestyle where you can actually go and visit your family. Because most of us in ministry, we live away from our families. I know when I went into ministry, I went to Bible college when I was 19 years old, 18, 19 years old. I was 19. Went to Bible college, and I haven't lived near my family since then. And I'm in my 40s now. Now, there was a 6-year window where I was 2.5 hours from my family. And that's the closest I've ever been. And some of us just can't get back to see our family, can't travel because we don't have time for that. The ministry is just going and going. We're needed too much. I don't think that's how God intended our ministry to run. And so what I want to do today is I want to show you the 4 steps, you could say, elements maybe, that will give you the abundant life that you desire, that deep down, maybe you don't verbalize it, maybe you don't talk about it, maybe you don't tell anybody about it. Maybe just way down deep in the recesses of your heart, you dream about it. This life that's quiet and relaxed, and you can just sit with a good book and a cup of coffee and just chill. Maybe that's what you deeply desire deep down in your heart. But this abundant lifestyle where you are healthy and growing and loving and patient, while at the same time pastoring an effective ministry where lives are changed and hearts are developed. Maybe. Well, what I want to do today is I want to show you the 4 steps that I think you should take in order to get there. All right? So the first step I think you need to take is that you need to develop your leadership. Develop your leadership. And I know way back early on, late 90s, when I was first getting into ministry, John Maxwell changed my life. Leadership was something I had never really understood, never even really thought about or conceptualized. It was just this word that was out there. But then John Maxwell came into my life with the 21 Laws, and my whole life was changed. And from that point on, I've been a leadership. I've just consumed everything that I can about leadership. In fact, I've got 2 degrees in some sort of leadership because I think it's foundational to being a good pastor. And what I mean by that is, if you look at the Great Commission is a calling to go and make disciples. Well, going and making disciples is influencing people. I'm going to influence people into a relationship with Jesus. That's making disciples. And so if that's the case, if that's what God's called us to, then ultimately we are called into leadership. So pastor, you're not the only one called into leadership. Your congregation is called into leadership. Every one of us who says, I am a follower of Jesus and I am called to go make disciples, all of us are called to a degree or a level of leadership. As a pastor, ultimately, when people come to your church, what they're asking, what they're wanting subtly, without verbalizing, is they're saying, I need a spiritual leader. Are you the person? That's what they're wanting. And so for churches who you've removed your leadership or your pastors from your website, and people go to your website and they're looking to learn about your church and they can't find who the pastors are, what they're finding is there is a void in spiritual leadership. Not that they don't think there's no pastors, but they don't know who those pastors are because they're looking for, who am I following? Who is the spiritual leader at this church that I'm going to learn from? And so much of why we are burning out and frustrated and ineffective and anxious and stressed out is because our leadership capacity has not kept up with our ministry capacity. You have grown, whether you're starting out in ministry or you've been in ministry for decades, your ministry acumen continues to grow. You draw more people in, you love on them, you pastor them, you preach to them, you teach them, all of those things. But if you can't lead them, they will eventually go somewhere else and find somebody who can. If you invest into your own leadership development, if you invest into your own leadership growth, then as your ministry acumen grows and your leadership grows, you will retain people in your sphere of influence because you will train and develop others to love and develop others. That's what we need to do as individuals. If you're struggling in your church, if you're struggling in your congregation, if you're having a hard time really getting people to move in any given direction, so whether it's you need more volunteers and you can't get people to volunteer in a specific area, or maybe there's an initiative or a ministry you're wanting to launch, but nobody's really getting behind it. Particularly if you feel like, man, I really feel like this is the direction God's calling us to, but the congregation just isn't going. There's a leadership issue there. There is probably a deficit in your leadership or an inability or a lack of skill in your leadership that needs developed so that you can lead people in the direction God's called you to. The reason why I think this is the beginning of everything that we're going to talk about today, the reason I think this is the beginning is because when you develop your leadership, you draw people in, you equip them, empower them, and you send them out. When you send them out, the idea is that they return back with results. If you're not effective in your leadership, you send them out and they get lost in the pasture and eventually find somewhere else to go, it's because there's a breakdown in leadership. When you are effective as a leader, then you can move people in a given direction. When God calls you, God says, hey, I want you to go this way. You're able to do that. When Moses led the Israelites, he led in the authority of God, but also his skill and ability to lead the people in a given direction. And so the first step is to develop your leadership, whether that's books, whether that's courses, whether that's a consultant or a coach or whatever. Find a way to develop your own leadership, because it all starts, as Maxwell said, everything rises and falls in leadership. It does. Absolutely 100% does. I've seen many, many great pastors who were not very good leaders, and they really struggled to create an abundant lifestyle at all because their church always struggled to do anything. So step one is to develop your leadership. The second thing you need to do, once you've developed your leadership, you are now ready to direct an effective team. Now, whether you're talking a staff, you have the ability to hire a staff, or maybe you already have a staff, or whether you're talking about a volunteer team, at the end of the day, if those groups are not effective at what they are called to do, not effective at what they've been entrusted to do, so even at the very least, let's say you're board, you have a board. If they are not effective as a board to do the things that you have entrusted them to do, then at the end of the day, they're not able to take things off of your plate, which means that you're going to carry everything on your own. So if your leadership is developed and you have this strong ability to lead people in a given direction, influence them in a certain way, then what happens is then you are now able to direct an effective team that can then be delegated to. You can't do the kids ministry. You can't do the youth ministry. You can't do the worship ministry. You can't do the lead pastor ministry. You can't do all of those things by yourself. You have to have other people. And so whether they're volunteers or paid staff members, if you can't direct them, if you can't hire or recruit quality volunteers to step into those roles and not direct them in an effective way, then what will happen is all of those things eventually will come back to you as responsibilities that you either need to do or you need to find somebody else to try and step in and do it. If you are burning through staff members or you're burning through volunteers, there's a good chance there is a deficit in your leadership or you don't know how to direct your teams. Learn to direct an effective team. And part of that's building an effective team. It's understanding what the role is that you're putting people into and making sure their skills and abilities meet that role. We plug bodies into places too often and not try to figure out how do we make this person's calling fit into what we're doing as a church. We take super creative people and we give them administrative tasks. And they don't want to do administrative tasks, but they'll do it because we've asked them to. But eventually it burns them out, or they get disinterested and they don't want to do it anymore. And then we're back to, okay, now I need to find somebody else to do it. But if we take somebody who's administratively gifted and we put them in an administrative role, you will think that you've given them a Christmas gift because they love it. And you're just giving them all kinds of administrative tasks that you prefer not to do. And they act like you're the most wonderful person in the world because we've matched their skill set and abilities with the role that they're stepping into. We have to direct an effective team in order to delegate things out to them so that we're not carrying everything else. The goal for every pastor, whether you're a lead, whether you're a staff pastor, whatever it is, the goal is for you to only do the things that only you can do. If it can be delegated out, delegate it, but delegate it well and give it to somebody else who loves to do what it is and can do the job in an effective way. So that's step 2, direct an effective team. The third thing that you need to do. So you've developed your leadership, which means you're now ready to lead people. And now you're directing an effective team, which means you're now able to delegate out to them and you have margin in your life. You have time, you have attention, you have energy to put to other things, more creative things, more networking things, whatever it is that you need to do. You're now ready to step into the third thing, and that is deliver engaging experiences. Everybody that comes to your church, everybody that walks into your service, everybody that walks through your doors, ultimately what they want is they want an experience that they will remember. Now, I'm not saying you need to throw a concert or this big dramatic play or whatever. I'm not saying that. They want an experience with Jesus is what they really want. They want to walk into a room and have an experience with their creator. That's the goal. And so what you want to do is you want to design engaging experiences where that happens, where you want to create an atmosphere, you want to create a flow of information, you want to create an experience that they go through and that they have where their lives are changed because they had an experience with Jesus. And a lot of that means being creative. A lot of that means preparing in advance. A lot of that, even, as I mentioned at the very beginning, some of us are putting together a next year's sermon calendar, next year's church calendar, next year's budget. We're planning to create experiences that are going to leave lasting impressions. You need to design engaging experiences because when you do that, when you design an engaging experience, what happens is people who visit have this incredible time because they had this great experience. And then what happens is they go back and they tell other people, but more importantly, they come back and they come back again and again and again, and their lives are changed and they're impacted by Jesus and his relationship with them. And then everything else flows out from them. All because you created an engaging experience that they could be a part of, their life was changed, and they could grow in. That's step 3. And then the final thing. So you've developed your leadership. So now you're ready to lead an effective team. You've directed that team in a way where they're doing the things that you can't do. And they're also doing things that you can do, but you don't need to do. And they're effective in what they're doing, and they're fulfilling the calling God's put on their life. So now you've directed the team, and now you're with that team and with the volunteers and with the staff, with the people, you are delivering engaging experiences where lives are changed. People are growing in their relationship with Jesus. They're being discipled. They're being invested into. They're making an impact in their community. They're changing lives of their job, they're having healthy families. When those things are happening because of the engaging experiences they've been a part of, now you're in a place where you can enjoy an abundant lifestyle. You can design the lifestyle of abundance that you have always wanted and looked for. And that's the next step. The reality is that some of us in ministry, we get so burned out and we get so worn down that we start forcing things like downtime. We start forcing things. I know for me, when I get overwhelmed, what I tend to do is I tend to shut down and I'll go watch an abundant amount of movies, or I'll get on my phone and I'll play games just because I'm too tired to really do anything else. But when you've gone through these steps, you've developed your leadership, you've directed your team, you've designed engaging experiences. Now you're at a place where you have the margin in your time to go hang out with your family, to go see your kids' things, to go travel, to have a hobby. You have the time and the margin to do that. Most likely at this point, you now have margin in your finances that you can do all those things. And for some of us, we don't just want to pastor. We don't just want to lead a church. We want to do other things. Some of us want to start businesses. Some of us want to be life coaches. Some of us want to write a book. I can't tell you how many pastors I've met who just want to write a book. They just can't find the time to do it. Well, when you've done the first 3 steps, when you've developed your leadership, you've directed an effective team, and you've designed engaging experiences, you now have the margin and ability to design the abundant life you've always wanted to. You can go write that book you've always wanted to write because now you have the time and space to do it. Because not everything is on your shoulders and not everything is up to you to do. You're able to hand those things off and trust people to do them. Not that you're forsaking your ministry, not that you're forsaking their calling, not that you're stepping away from what God has called you to do, but more likely, and what's more the reality is, you're stepping into a greater fullness of that calling because it's multifaceted and it brings more abundance back to your congregation, to your church experience, to the people in your community. You're serving more people, you're making an impact in more people's lives because you're living an abundant life and you are reflecting Jesus to them. Now, I'm not saying it's all easy. I'm not going to say you're going to do this in the next six weeks. I'm not saying that at all. But I am saying this is a step-by-step guide to how you can get to an abundant lifestyle where you're not going to burn out. You're not going to live a life of anxiety and stress all the time. Where you're not going to be worried about, are we going to pay the bills? Where you're not worried about, are we going to have to shut our doors? Or you're not worried about, are people going to come through to our services? You're not worried about those things. Because you're living an abundant lifestyle and that deficit mindset that you've had is gone. And that's where God wants us to be. This lifestyle of abundance where we are giving and giving and loving and serving other people into relationship with Him. And that's my hope for you, my goal for you. I don't want you to burn out. I don't want you to live life anxious and stressed. I don't want that for you. I want you to live a life that is reflective of Jesus and gives hope to the world that the stressed out, frustrated, overwhelming life that they live can be different in a relationship with Jesus. I want you to be there. I want me to be there. I want all of us to be there as pastors and ministry leaders so that we can reflect Jesus to them. That's the goal. That's the hope. That's what I want for you. And so what I want to invite you to do is I want to invite you to go to brandonpartycooper.com/abundance. And right there is a free guide on how you can get there. Now it's going to expand these 4. There's more steps in between of how you can live this abundant lifestyle. Go to brandonpartycooper.com/abundance. Get your free guide. It's a simple PDF. You just download it. It's very simple. It's 1 page. It shows you all the steps of how you can go from tired, exhausted, worn out pastor all the way to living an abundant lifestyle, loving what you do, again, having energy, having excitement, being there for your family, being there for your spouse, traveling, doing the hobbies that you love, spending the time with Jesus that you always want to. The guide is going to take you step by step. So it lines it all out. All you have to do is follow the steps and it gets you there. So again, go to brandonpartycooper.com/abundance and discover the steps that you need to take in order to get there. Expound these 4, what you need to do to get to the abundant life. Because again, I believe that's what Jesus wants for us. Not because he wants to have us live this lavish lifestyle of luxury. Not that at all. But I think he wants us to live a healthy lifestyle where he shines through us and lives are changed because we're not overwhelmed and stressed and tired all the time, but because we are full of life and joy and excitement because of all the things God is doing in us and through us. That's what God's called us to. That's what I believe he wants for you. And so that's why I created this guide. So again, brandonpartycooper.com/abundance, get your guide and start living the abundant life that you imagine in your dreams and maybe you hide way down in your heart and don't talk about. Because as pastors, we think we can't. And I want to tell you, you absolutely can. You can live a life of abundance. You can live a life of joy and happiness while having an effective ministry. You don't have to choose one or the other. And I want that to change for you. So thank you so much for being here. Love that you take time to spend with me. And I hope this is helpful for you. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. And I'll see you in the next episode.